right. Fly back up here, stay for a week or two.
Okay, do it again. Yes, please.
Really good. When does it come out? How long do we have to be good?
The whole time. Perfect. Thank you.
And then I'm lying, so. I know, come on. Okay, how are we doing? That's a beautiful day here in sunny Anchorage, Alaska. That's what I'm talking about. All right, so where's everybody from? Where are you from?
Wisconsin.
Nice.
Wisconsin, man.
Cool.
San Francisco.
San Francisco.
Texas.
Texas.
California.
California. Very nice. You guys back there behind them?
North Carolina.
Cool. Way in the back. Cincinnati. Way in front. Texas. Cool. A lot of Texas. Okay, I like it. You guys?
Florida.
Florida.
Michigan.
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 Represent.
Local.
Not. Oh my gosh, you're local. I love it. Right on. Way in the back.
He's my tour guide.
Way in the back there. Michigan as well.
Now,
Southern California.
Southern California. Beautiful.
Southern California.
All right, folks. Look at these trolleys bringing us together. It's a beautiful thing, isn't it? All right. So I'm gonna give you guys a little intro here. Here's my face. So now you guys know me. All right. Sounds good. All right. So my name is Chris. I'll be your tour guide for today. My roots here in Alaska go back pretty far, actually. My great-grandfather came up here in the 1930s to homestead. My mom's side of my family has been up here ever since. So I'm a fourth-generation Alaskan. Got 2 minutes walking around. Thank you. Thank you. I was born in the capital, which is Juneau. Born in the capital, Juneau. There's usually at least one like, hey, Gru. Juneau. So my dad was in the Coast Guard, stationed down there. Welcome aboard. How's it going? Dad was in the Coast Guard, stationed down there for about a year. We moved up here to Anchorage, been here ever since. And I love this place. I love camping, mountain biking, fishing, hiking, and driving trolleys. Where are you guys from?
Oregon.
Or, I was just saying, I'm from Oregon. I was just saying that.
Yeah.
That was so crazy. What am I saying? Should we do this thing?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. So we're going to pull it out here onto 4th Avenue. 4th Avenue is pretty well known for what happened here the night of the Great Alaska Earthquake. Have we all heard of that?
Yes.
Great Alaska Earthquake. That was March 27th, 1964. It was a 9.2 on the Richter scale. A 9.2 earthquake. It still holds records today as the largest earthquake in the Northern Hemisphere, second largest in all of the world. And if you have been in an earthquake before, you will know that about 10 seconds feels like an eternity. That earthquake lasted 4 minutes and 38 seconds. 4 minutes and 38 seconds. This place was rocking and rolling. And I mentioned that here on 4th Avenue because 4th Avenue split right down the middle the night of that Great Alaska Earthquake. A lot of the time, if you see pictures of the earthquake damage, it will be of this stretch right through here. And the land mass here in Anchorage, over 15,000 acres, dropped anywhere from 8 to over 200 feet that night. We can see some evidence of that right here. You'll notice 4th Avenue, 5th, 6th, so on. It's all pretty much level. 3rd Avenue down here in front of us used to be level with 4th Avenue as well. So you can see that significant drop right there, down that slope, going all the way down to the inlet. So once we get out to Earthquake Park, we're going to go over some of the details, kind of how exactly all that went down the way that it did. Just kind of keep this mental image in your head for now. Really quick here, for the time being, if you guys look about a block up over here, right-hand side of the road, there's a Club 25 sign. Right below that sign, a dog statue. Can you guys see that up there? Might be kind of hard to see because of the cars. If you can't see it right here, so if you go up to 4th and D after the tour, D as in dog, you'll be able to find it. So the tip of that statue's nose is the start of the iconic Iditarod Trail. The Iditarod commemorates the 1925 serum run out to Nome. Nome, Alaska was struck with diphtheria, and the only way to get that life-saving serum out to Nome was by dog sled. Given the time of year, it was January, so they couldn't take boat, they couldn't take plane, they had to go by dog sled. Most people have heard of Balto. We all heard of Balto?
Yeah.
Walt Disney made it famous. That's a statue of Balto. He was the lead dog on the last stretch. He kind of carried the torch through the finish line, saving the lives of hundreds. He has recently been rightfully forced to share his spotlight with another prominent canine. Anybody know his name?
Togo.
Togo! Yeah. His name was Togo. Disney just put out a movie about Togo. You guys gotta keep with the Disney movies, come on. So Togo was the lead dog on by far the longest stretch. He did over 200 miles of some of the most treacherous terrain. Balto actually only had doing about 25 miles. So people kind of started hating on Balto there for a little bit. We don't hate Balto, we just love them both now. Yeah, no, not at all. Over on the left-hand side, the Eisenhower Alaska Statehood Monument. We were accepted into the Union January 3rd, 1959, when Dwight D. Eisenhower was the president. We affectionately refer to this statue as Ike on a half shell. It's kind of a weird-looking statue. His head busting out like a pearl. And it gets weirder the longer you look at it. So don't look too long. 1959, the same year that Hawaii was accepted into the Union, making us the 49th and then the 50th. Little known fact, Hawaii was actually supposed to go first, but they decided to let us go before them so they could call themselves Hawaii 5-0. Oh, yeah. That's hilarious, Chris. That's awesome. Yeah, you should hear some of the grumbles that I go. Yes, I love it.
From Hawaii.
I love, yeah, totally. All right, so we're headed up here now towards the Alaska Railroad Station. This place is the whole reason that Anchorage is here as a city today. Towards the end of the 19th century, it became pretty evident just from the rapidly growing population up here, there needed to be some form of transport across this vast state for people, postage, freight, all that good stuff. And at the time, the best way to do that was by rail. In 1903, a private company undertook that job. They started down in Seward, but they only got about 51 miles out until they went bankrupt. And then it just kind of sat that way until 1914, when the federal government stepped in. They shipped up 2,000 men who lived right around here in 1,000 Army insulated tents for over 2 years during the construction of the railroad. 2 years, two to a tent. Could you imagine? Not to mention, only one of those tents was designated for bathing. Yeah. So if you stick your nose out your window here, you can actually still smell. Monsters kind of hang.
So Chris, was this leveled up with 4th Street?
So
right here,
we talk about the landmass that was dropped. So this was the settlement of Anchorage was built on a big bluff, and so the buildings that were taken down there, it was just kind of like the corner of that bluff that was taken off by landslides. And so there was still a lot of stuff that was down here at sea level, but as far as like that sort of gradual slope right there, and then the drop right there, starting at the 2nd and 4th Avenue, that's earthquake, I guess, sign of earthquake. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Over on your left-hand side, the Alaska Railroad engine number 1, that is a real locomotive. Just a cute little guy, huh? Had a very specific job up here in Alaska. You guys see that red and white bumper on the front there? Well, if you've heard of a cow catcher, that, my friends, is a moose gooser. A little bit nicer than those cow catchers. So its job was to scoot along the tracks between 1 and 2 miles an hour and just gingerly bump those big moose right on the rear and teach them not to lay on the tracks. Those moose can get pretty big, up to 1,600 pounds for a big bull moose. So they had the potential to derail those trains, losing thousands in merchandise. So the moose gooser was employed. Of those 2,000 original railroad men, about 600 of them decided to stick around and make this place their home. They sent for their families, they came up here, and they decided, we need to name this place. They took a vote, and there was 3 different names on the ballot. Anchorage, Alaska City, and Tent City, Alaska. Tent City, isn't that beautiful? So you would think that Anchorage won, right? Alaska City, Alaska won our vote, stole our hearts. That is the vote that we sent into the Seattle Post Office, which at that time was really the only form of communication in and out of Alaska. About 2 weeks later, we got a telegraph back from a Seattle Post Office worker that said, I am in charge of all of the mail in and out of Alaska. We have been calling you Anchorage for 2 months. Your name is Anchorage. End of discussion. And here we are, Anchorage, Alaska. I don't quite like it. Imagine if I had Tent City written on my driver's license. It was so embarrassing. We're headed up here now towards the Cook Inlet, named after famous British explorer Captain James Cook, commissioned in 1776 to find the Northwest Passage. which was to be a trade route through the Americas connecting the Atlantic and Pacific. Never to be found because it doesn't exist. However, in his travels, Captain Cook is credited with finding parts of Australia, New Zealand, Tahiti, Hawaii, and Alaska. Over on the right, a statue of the good captain. Not his most flattering angle, but that's what we got.
Yeah.
Yeah. They did a great job on his caps.
That's a nice cast. Yeah.
So, Captain Cook, if you look at a map of Alaska, you'll see there's the Cook Inlet that comes to a head right here. Then there's these two big arms that stretch off either way. And when Captain Cook saw those, he thought that one of them just had to be the Northwest Passage. He sent reconnaissance missions up both sides. Sent them up that first side. They came back. They said, no dice. Sent them up the other side. And unfortunately, they had to turn again with more bad news for their good captain. So ever since then, that big body of water has been known as the Turnigan Arm. Because they had to turn again. So Captain Cook, realizing that was not what he was looking for, headed farther up north, got to the Bering Sea Strait, the narrow body of water about 26 miles wide, separating Russia and Alaska. So we can indeed see Russia from our backyard. Thank you, Sarah Taylor. Got there in the month of November, the water being frozen, could not go any farther, decided to turn back around, go back to the Hawaiian Islands, where he was killed later that year. We're coming up here now to 9th Avenue. 9th Avenue used to be the city limit of Anchorage. Everything in front of us was just a big, thick forest. Everything behind us, the settlement of Anchorage, built entirely out of wood. If you have a settlement built entirely out of wood, what might you fear? Fire. So this right here, the Delaney Park Strip. It's about a block thick, 14 blocks in length, and it used to run the entire length of the settlement. Its original purpose was fire buffer. They had fear of lightning strikes or gender reveals or whatever else. Lighting this forest out here ablaze, burning that little wood settlement to the ground. So in prevention of that, they plowed the Delaney Park Strip. And they feared for good reason. Those forest fires happen on a very common basis up here in Alaska. Pretty much every summer, we're going to have some big forest fires, and they can burn up to 1 million acres of land in the course of a summer easy, which sounds pretty devastating, but up here in Alaska, we have over 360 million acres of land. So it's kind of just a drop in the bucket. And most of the land that burns is uninhabited, and they are also crucial to the health of different areas. What will happen is, over the years, the undergrowth will start to become overgrown and kind of choke out vital vegetation. Those forest fires rip through, burn it all to the ground. It's like Mother Nature's reset button for that area. The first tree to start popping back up after one of those forest fires is the willow tree, which is the primary building block of the diet of the Alaska moose. So if we didn't have the forest fires in those overgrown areas, eventually the willow tree would be pushed out, followed by the moose, and then the predators, so on and so forth. They just kind of regulate the ecosystem here. And my parents actually, so now they live in a little city called Willow. It's about an hour and a half north of Anchorage, and they went on a snow machine ride this past March. We call them snow machines. Call them snowmobiles. We are right, you are wrong. It's fine. We love you anyways. But they went on that ride and they found a spot where the forest fires from the summer previous were still burning. They burned down through the root systems of the trees and just kind of smolder in the peat underground, and it was smoking like it had burned yesterday. It was crazy. And so those firefighters, they've actually got to go out, dig up the underground embers and put them out, otherwise they'll kick back up in the spring and start all over again. Left-hand side over here, this is West Anchorage High School. This was the first modern high school of Anchorage. I've had 3 generations of my family graduate from this school. The 4th was not so lucky, but that's okay. So I'm a bus driver. I'm just kidding. No. I graduated. So if you look at that eagle, look at that bottom claw, then look at the black cuff right above that bottom claw. Do you see a little hidden 71 in there in beige? Yeah. Same color as the wall in the design of that black cuff. Do we all see that?
Class of 71.
So the story behind that, the class of 71 raised the money to have the eagle put on the side of the building. They went to the principal and they asked him if they could have a 71 painted on the eagle, and he said, no. But do high school seniors not do very well? So they went behind the principal's back, paid off that artist, and had him hide a 71 right there on the eagle. Not to be noticed by that poor principal for over 4 years. If it took a minute to find it, don't forget. How are we doing, by the way? Too loud? Too quiet? We happy? Good. Alright, sounds good.
Perfect.
If you guys look out across the lagoon over here, you're going to see a building marked Inlet. It's got the white and brown stripes running down it. We all see that over there?
Yes.
So that, the Inlet Tower, was one of the only high-rise structures standing after that 1964 earthquake. There was a lot of destruction here in Anchorage. That city skyline was looking pretty different. It was actually illegal to build over 2 stories high here in Anchorage for a number of years following that earthquake. This high school, a good portion of it, toppled right to the ground, had to be rebuilt. But despite all that damage, there was only 9 casualties here in Anchorage the night of that earthquake. Only 9. Which was pretty devastating considering there was only 10 people living here at the time. Not very good at all. Yeah. So the reason there was not more casualties, it was a holiday. It was Good Friday. So people were not at school, they were not at work, they were at home with their families or out of town and able to get to safer areas. Most of those buildings that came down collapsed completely empty. There was actually supposed to be a basketball game at that high school starting at 5 o'clock p.m. the night of that earthquake. That earthquake hit at 5:36. The only reason the basketball game was canceled, 5 good Catholic mothers went to the principal and complained they had scheduled the game on Good Friday. There you go. They didn't want their boys playing ball on Good Friday. They wanted them at church, so the game was canceled. It is estimated that up to 500 people could have lost their lives had that game gone on. That was coined the West High Miracle. And even to this day, I like to think there's nothing more powerful and influential and potentially scary, really, as 5 angry Catholic mothers. While we're going through this neighborhood, every once in a while I have somebody sitting next to their Catholic mother and like, I know, I feel you. While we're going through this neighborhood, you're going to notice just a lot of different unique styles of homes, all pretty different from one another. And then back there on that last road, if anybody noticed, the left-hand side of the trolley, there were some trailer homes. Right across the street, some wood frame housing. So that is all evidence to the fact that Anchorage, throughout its history, has been part of a boom and bust economy. There have been different events that have brought just huge amounts of people up in very short periods of time. Things like the gold rush, the railroad, World War II, oil boom in the 70s, just to name a few. And so the building industry couldn't keep up with the demand of homes, so a lot of people's first homes here during Anchorage's earliest formative years were just those trailers stationed out there in the middle of the woods, way beyond the city limit at the time, and then the settlement built out towards them over the years. And that's why, especially right here in this neighborhood, this is one of the older neighborhoods in Anchorage, you'll see homes throughout here that look like they were just built in completely different eras. That reflects the building industry sort of lagging behind, trying to keep up with that rapidly growing population. But the one house that kind of takes the cake for uniqueness, over here on your right-hand side, Anchorage's one and only underground home. Every once in a while I have somebody say, I don't see any of the hers.
Oh, there it is.
Chimney stacks. That awning right there covers 14 steps that go down to the entrance of this 3-story home. This place goes down 3 stories. This is a 2,800 square foot home. And it's kind of built into a hill, so the far side is open actually. It's got big old plate glass windows on that far side. So you get a lot of natural daylight. The Isaacsons own this place. They're a very popular family here in Anchorage, about every hour or so. And they started construction in the late 1970s, and they have lived in it ever since. They got no plans of selling it. And they said that this place is just, they gave us a big fact sheet about their house, so they're on board. They gave us a big fact sheet, so we give you guys all the details and everything. But they said this place is just wildly efficient. Even in the dead of winter, they don't have to spend any more than about $85 a month to keep this place warm. And that is with amenities like a heated driveway and a hot tub in the back. Heated driveway, no shoveling for the Isaacsons. That's pretty bougie. I told my grandpa I had the word bougie in my tour. He's like, what the heck is bougie? It's just like fancy, I guess. I don't know. I don't even know. I don't know why you use it. It's funny, that's fine. They did say that the only problem with the home is that in the summer months they have to mow their roof. So, So a lot of people, they take this tour, they ask us about housing costs. Let's talk housing. Throw some numbers at you here. Over here on your left-hand side, that green home, your average single-family split-level home. Let's use that as an example. A place like that in the 2020 housing market would have gone for bottom dollar, $400,000. Right-hand side, a little bit bigger, that bluish gray home right there, sold 4 years ago for $575,000 initial listed price. You will not be able to find a 2-bedroom apartment here in Anchorage for any less than about $1,650. That is excluding utilities. So housing here in Anchorage can be a little steep. And everything's relative, right? If you were to take, sometimes we'll have people from LA, they'd be like, that's nothing. Like, I don't pipe down. But everything's relative. If you were to take those same homes, pick them up and move them about 40 minutes north of here to Wasilla or Palmer, they're going to be about half of that cost. So the reason Anchorage specifically is so much more expensive than some of the surrounding areas, we are running out of land here in Anchorage, which sounds totally ridiculous. I know. I just got to tell you, we've got 360 million acres of land up here. But so Anchorage is built on a peninsula. If you look over to the east, you will see the Chugach Mountains. If you look everywhere else, you will see the Cook Inlet wrapping around. We are landlocked here in Anchorage, quite literally running out of buildable land. So the price of property just keeps on going up. And obviously it varies widely across the city, but the average cost of 1 acre of undeveloped property in the city is about $185,000. And all of that is just punctuated by the fact that Alaska's population in its entirety is only about 700,000. Anchorage's population hangs out just under 300,000. So roughly 40% of Alaska's entire population is found right here within city limits. So I suppose the next question would be why, right? Why do so many people want to live right here in Anchorage? And the answer is Anchorage Trolley Tours. I asked that question, right, Anchorage? Yeah, we got a local right here, that's right. So I asked that question a few days ago, and there was a lady here from a village a little bit farther up north, and she said, why do people want to live in Anchorage? It has everything. And what she was talking about, places like Costco and Walmart, heating and plumbing in every structure. You will find plenty of places all throughout Alaska that do not have such luxuries. The finer things of life, like a chicken bake from Costco. Oh, what would be that? And then another huge reason, just job opportunities. A lot of the different industries that bring in the most revenue to the state are kind of centrally based out of the big city of Anchorage. Highest grossing being fishing, followed by oil, tourism, mining, and military makes the list as well, actually. One of the next most populous cities in the state is our capital, Juneau, with a population of just under 30,000. So quite a bit smaller than us here in Anchorage. And there are actually only 3 ways to get to Juneau. Do you guys want to guess what they are? Boat, plane, or birth canal. And more there, folks. Sometimes I'll say that, somebody will say, that was so gross. And I just keep on saying it. I think it's hilarious. It's like the first joke you hear when you go to Juneau. So there's no road access to our capital. It's the only capital in all of the United States that you cannot drive to. No railroad tracks out there either. And when people ask us why we don't build roads in and out of our capital, we usually just say something about keeping all of the politicians tucked away down there. Keeps all the hubbub out of it. Alright, so we're pulling up here now to Earthquake Park. Earthquakes are caused by pressure and friction, movement in the tectonic plates below. Here in Alaska, we're situated right above the Oceanic Pacific Plate and the continental North American Plate. The night of that Great Alaska earthquake, that Pacific Plate lurched northward and actually subducted under the continental plate, giving rise to just huge amounts of power coursing through this area for over 4.5 minutes. Okay, so question time. We'll just have to find a consensus, but this is my last tour of the day. I'm not on a super tight schedule. Is there anybody that needs to be back, like, right, perfect on time?
We have to be at 7 o'clock. Right?
Sounds good. You got it.
Sorry, everybody.
No, you're totally good. All right, sounds good. It'd be really fast. Here's what we're gonna do. Just because this person's kind of parked in a spot where it will be hard to see this place really, so we're just gonna get off really quick. We're gonna crowd around right here, and I'm gonna yell at you guys when I'm talking about this place. Let's do that. And whoever wants to stay on is more than welcome. I'll leave the mic on so you guys will be able to see it and hear it and everything.
Do you want out? No, I'm good. I'm good too.
I know he's gonna want a picture. Leave your bag when you're back.
Oops, sorry. Sorry. I guess there's. Oh, you good? Oh.
That was you, right?
What's about what?
The 7 o'clock?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for the trail, man. Good. What?
So we'll try to kind of part a little bit so these people can see it on the trolley still, but I'll tell you what we're looking at here. So this land mass that we're looking at down here, so this all used to be level with the parking lot that we were sitting on before that earthquake. You used to be able to walk right out there. Dropped an average of about 35 feet basically in the blink of an eye from what was called liquefaction. Around a lot of Alaska, the foundation is blue clay, typically pretty stable unless disturbed, in which case it can effectively liquefy, and that gave rise to landslides all over the state, but especially right here in the Anchorage area. So I'm talking there downtown about starting right there at the second half. Can you guys hear me okay? Starting right there at the second half of 4th Avenue, that slope going all the way down into the inlet, landslide. Just took off half that bluff, and all the buildings were sitting on top of it. This area right here, you look pretty athletic, LSU. Want to do a little demo for us? No? All right. I can do it. I can't get the rest of the tour, then I'm just out of breath. So I'm gonna hook it on down there. You got it. All right, so I see this big land wave. Those are like the last one that we can see. Turn around, give us a little wave from running back. I've only seen bears like 3 times today. You're good.
Hey, slow down a little bit.
Okay. So keep eyes on this guy. So this area right here, if you can imagine, this was all just kind of suspended on a hit a John. It just you'll see. I'll tell you when to stop. All right. Last one. Yeah. So you can see there's these big land waves that roll throughout the area down here. Those are all anywhere from 3 to 9 feet high. That is what this place was looking like live action for 4 minutes and 38 seconds. Those are like shock waves frozen in time. All right, that's perfect. Hello.
I'm taking pictures now.
There's a bear in the woods.
It's just hard to see how pronounced the waves actually are until you see somebody running up and down it. Yeah, especially that one.
Chris, what's this place called?
Earthquake Park. Yeah. And how dramatic this drop actually is too.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
All right, we'll hop back on the road.
Alright.
Yeah, let's that
Good sport. Good sport.
Yeah. It's got to be somebody.
Yeah.
Thanks, Garrett. We have a pretty good idea what this place looks like right now. Now, let's go back in time to the night of that Great Alaska earthquake. So picture with me in your mind's eye. We're talking March 27th, still plenty of snow on the ground. 1964, obviously nobody's got cell phones in their pockets, communication's pretty tough. 23 degrees Fahrenheit at the time, still pretty chilly outside, 5:36 p.m. Everybody sitting down to have dinner. This area right here was a residential area. There were 75 homes built all throughout here. Those waves came ripping through, cracked the foundation of those homes, twisted, mangled, buried a lot of them in the dirt. But a good portion of them, the ones that were a little bit farther out that way, were actually pushed with these waves out into the inlet about 75 yards that way and just dropped out in the mud.
Damn.
So this area of town used to be called Turnagain by the Sea, is now nicknamed Turnagain in the Sea. It's a little grim, I know.
Any more earthquakes after that?
Oh, we get earthquakes all the time, man.
Really?
The last bigger one we had was like a 6.1. I think that was about 2 months ago now.
Oh, really?
And in 2018 or 2019, and I think it was October, there was like 7.2. That one's pretty big too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in the same plate.
Yeah, and I mean, 0
8
people
o'clock?
ended up dying, which is, I mean, obviously amazing. There was a pretty serious amount of infrastructural damage that happened at the 7.2. The 6.1 didn't really have much damage at all. All right, so that number of 9, let's talk about this real quick. So that number of 9, that is the number of deaths that were a direct result of the earthquake damage here in Anchorage. The grand total number of deaths from that event as a whole sits quite a bit higher though, 131, with most of them being due to the resulting tsunami waves. So tsunami waves were sent out in every direction. Japan, Costa Russia, Hawaii, all hit by waves. South Central and Southeast Alaska were absolutely ravaged by tsunami waves. Places like Seward and Whittier suffered substantial damage. Valdez, a little fishing village in the southeast, was leveled entirely, had to be totally rebuilt. There's actually an old Valdez and a new Valdez, about 300 feet up higher. And just outside of Valdez, one bay over in Chute Bay is where the highest wave was seen, recorded at 219 feet high. If you can imagine that barreling towards it about 60 miles an hour, 23-story building. Anchorage here can't have tsunami waves just because of the way that we are placed in the Cook Inlet. The wave would have to make a big turn in order to hit us here, so can't have them here. But those waves went as far as Crescent City, California, where 12 people ended up losing their lives. Crescent City was evacuated, and then 12 people decided to sneak back onto the beach, set up tripods and cameras to take pictures of the waves coming back in. Last thing they ever saw. You know what we call that? Natural selection.
Oh!
Call it like it is up here, folks.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions before we move on? All right. Over on your right-hand side. So this big plot of land right here. You're noticing there's primarily one type of tree. That is called the black spruce. The reason for that, the black spruce is one of the only types of trees that can grow and maintain itself on top of permafrost. So this is a big pocket of permafrost right here in Anchorage. Permafrost is just land that never thaws out except for a very shallow top layer. And about 2/3 of our state is covered with permafrost. The depth at which the ice is found and how deep it actually goes really varies depending on where you're at in the state. But there are some areas of Alaska where they have gone past 2,000 feet deep and still not found the bottom of the ice. These black spruce, they only need a very shallow root system in order to maintain life, but even still, you can see they look kind of stunted in their growth because there's only so much nutrition in that top layer of soil that thaws. The rest underneath is just ice. That top layer of soil that does thaw just kind of creates this boggy, marshy sort of an area, huge attractants to the great Alaska moose. You will hear Alaska residents call this a very moosey area. And the reason being, moose have no way of naturally cooling themselves. Their cold regulation is phenomenal, their heat regulation is very poor. And they can start overheating just from digesting their food. And they don't sweat, they don't pant like dogs, but they have hollow hair, and so their best way to cool themselves down is just find these sort of boggy, marshy areas and just lay down in the mud. And so that's why we have over here on the right-hand side this moose fence and moose gate. Moose fence, moose gate. What that moose gate is, that is a one-way gate. The moose can go in, but they can't come back out that way. You can see the way those prongs are bent. It would just kind of bonk them in the head if they try to come back out that way. But actually, we had this one tour guide named Bracken, and he said, pretty much immediately after finishing that sentence, he saw this big bull moose walk out of the woods and walk right out of the moose gate. It is possible. Usually a pretty good deterrent. And so this is not an enclosed fence. The whole far side is open, so they can get out with ease. It's about 3 miles that way. But what the moose fence and the moose gate do is they just kind of guide those moose away from our roads to safer areas. So if you look around a lot of the city, these sort of tundra landscapes that are by the busier road systems are almost always separated by a moose fence and a moose gate. Just kind of steering them away to safety. Because there is nothing that you want to see in your headlights less than a big 1,600-pound bull moose ripping around in your Prius. And so the cow moose, she's going to go into heat for the first time in her 2nd year, and she will have at least one calf every single year for the rest of her life. Poor girl. Those first couple births, while she's still getting up to size, are almost always a single birth, but then after that, once she has reached her full size, she's got right about a 35% chance of having either twins or even triplets. So she'll get to be right about 14 years old and then have anywhere from 17 to 21 calves throughout her lifetime. And then will die shortly thereafter the last. Maybe by choice. I'm not sure. It's like, I'm over this. Shutting down the baby factory. And those calves, they will stick close to their mom until they get to be right about 1, at which time those cows will kind of start bucking and biting and nipping at the yearlings in preparation for her next calf or set of calves. So from the time of about 1 year old on, they are just all by themselves, living out here in the woods. Solitary animals. You're never going to see a big herd of moose walking around. Any questions? All right. And hopefully to put you guys at ease, we'll definitely be back by 7. Definitely. So right now we're pulling into Lake Hood and Lake Spenard. This is the largest and busiest small engine aircraft airfield in the entire world. Of all of the small engine aircraft around the globe, 25% are found in Alaska, about half of that in Anchorage. But while we're driving through this airfield alone, we're going to pass 5% of the globe's small engine aircraft. There's a lot of planes here. Pop quiz. Why do we fly so much? What's the deal? We have no roads. Like I said before, 360 million acres, but we've only got about 16,000 miles of road. And that's not just talking about paved roads either. Just anything you would see on a map, be it dirt, gravel, pavement, is counted in that 16,000. So a lot of the time, the only way to get into some of those more remote areas of Alaska is by bush plane. We have got to fly. There are 1,100 planes here, 600 water slips, 500 land tie downs. But before talking more about that, if anybody's in the market for a truck, right over on the right, it's half off, today only. Right there. That's in great shape, I know. So this place, if you average out all the flights that this airfield will handle on an annual basis, it comes out to right about 200 every single day. But on peak days of summer, they will see up to 750 takeoffs and landings. Wow. All regulated and monitored by that international air tower right over there. That's the Ted Stevens International Airport. That is the same tower that saw your plane fly in. Can you go over here on your left-hand side? Is a good look at just how many planes are here. Here over there. You're going to notice a lot of these planes look pretty old. The reason is they're pretty old. Most of these planes were built in the 40s and 50s, and they just perform the required maintenance as necessary, which includes a full engine overhaul every 1,000 hours. Every 1,000 hours, that engine has to get rebuilt from top to bottom. The rest of the plane is pretty old. A few different types of planes are on this lake. One of the bigger is the Haviland Beaver. We've actually got one over there on the water right there. That's a Beaver. And there's going to be another silver one over here on the left. And then a blue and green colored one usually sitting right here in the water. Those are all Beavers. And they were built in Canada. They started production in 1947, and then over the next 2 decades, they only built about 1,600 of them. But Beavers, though they are few, they are mighty. They earned the nickname of the plane that built Alaska because of the massive amount of weight that they can carry. Over 2,000 pounds of useful load strapped to the wings up top and the floats below. All these different types of landing gear that you're seeing are interchangeable. You got skis for snow takeoff and landing, floats or pontoons for water takeoff and landing. Left-hand side, you guys see those big old balloon-looking tires? Those look like cartoon tires almost. And then a couple planes over, that little green and cream colored plane, how much smaller those tires are. How embarrassing, right? So those smaller ones, those would just be for gravel and pavement. Those bigger ones, those are called tundra tires or bush wheels. They are considered to be puncture-proof for landing virtually anywhere. Just anywhere that's not a nice manicured landing strip but still flat enough to land, they are absolutely the go-to. Over on the right-hand side, another type of plane you're going to see all over the place up here, these little Cubs. Just kind of put eyes on those for a second. I'm going to talk about them when we're making this corner, and then there's really going after you make the corner. So they've only got one seat in the front, one in the back. You'll notice there's the metal casing around the engine, but the rest of the plane is just a tubular metal frame with a canvas type material stretched around it. Just a fabric covered by an epoxy paint, making them just notoriously light. It is literally a glorified kite with a 150 horsepower engine on the front. Over on the right, this one's a pretty wicked little plane. So I actually know the kid that flies this plane. His name's Matthew. Played hockey with him my whole life. He said in his little Super Cub, he can easily take off in under 200 feet.
Wow.
But if you think that's impressive, they have short takeoff and landing competitions down in Valdez every year. The world record was set a few years back by a highly modified Super Cub. Granted, totally decked out specifically for the competition, but even still, took off in 10 feet, landed in 9. They'll hold that brake down and then ramp the engine up to max RPM and let it go and just take off like a helicopter. It's pretty wild. Airplanes can be pretty expensive. Those big Beavers we were looking at, your bottom dollar for a de Havilland Beaver is going to be about $350,000. And they can get all the way up to about $800,000, just depending on the year it was built, the bells and whistles inside, the condition it's in. Another thing that adds value to the Beavers, like I said, they only built about 1,600, so if one goes down, that's just one more off the market. These mid-sized Cessnas, they're still making Cessnas, the 4-seaters, you're seeing all over the place. So they still make a couple models of Cessna, and a brand new one, a good price for one of those would be about $400,000. You can find older, rattier ones for as low as about $165, but I mean, it'd be a fixer-upper. And you buy those Super Cubs, when you buy them new, you buy them in a kit, and you can find a base model kit for as low as about $50,000 without the engine. By the time the whole build is complete, it'll be at least $100,000 as well. Which sort of leads into my next point. A lot of people ask about these shacks next to these airplanes. So what those are the homes of the husbands that bought planes for the passenger wives. Secondly, it's kind of just utility shit, just hunting, fishing gear, stuff like that. Oh, that's so boring, right? So every once in a while, you'll see some open spots. Just know, none of these are available. If you do not see the plane here, they're out flying or they're in a different type of landing gear. They lease these spots from the city for about $115 a month, so it's really not too bad once you have got it, but getting it is the issue. In order to get one of these spots, you have to go through a wait list with an average wait time of about 15 years. 15 years. And you cannot inherit one of these spots. You can't put it in your will. You can't sell it to your buddy. You can't sublease them out. You've got to go through that wait list. They will actually go around and make sure that the airplane sitting in the spot is registered to the person that is leasing that spot. We actually passed my uncle's plane a little bit ago. He's got a spot on the water over there, and he's got the same spot that my grandpa used to have. Well, what they have to do is my grandpa had to wait until my uncle was at the top of the list, and then he can forfeit his spot to his son. That's the only way that they will stay in families.
Oh, cool.
Any other questions? All right. So, that lake that we were sitting next to for a minute back there, that's called Lake Spinard. So there's Lake Hood a little bit farther back. It's connected to Lake Spinard by a man-made canal for taxiing. Lake Spinard is named after a fun little character in our history up here, Joe Spinard. So Joe Spinard came up here looking to take part in that rich, growing economy that the railroad had created. He was an entrepreneur with several different business ventures. The first was just a little trading cart that he would tote up and down Main Street. People could come and buy and sell goods. And then he owned and operated the only taxi service in Anchorage. But the one that really put him on the map started with prohibition. Anchorage became a dry city. There was no more alcohol allowed. And our good friend Joe Spinard saw that as a wonderful business opportunity. So he made the trek out there to the lake, about 3 miles outside of city limits, just far enough away from the law, and he started bootlegging. And people had no problem following him out there for a drink. So if you notice, the downtown area, which was the settlement at the time, was built on a grid system. ABC, 1, 2, 3, pretty easy to find your way around. The only street that really broke that trend back in the day was Spinard Street. It kind of weaves back and forth. The old urban legend is that Scenic Street was paved over the path that the men would take, staggering low. And in those days, there was a lot of single men up here. The ratio of women to men was about 1 woman for every 7 or 8 men.
Wow.
So a lot of single guys with a bunch of money in their pockets and way too much time on their hands out there hanging out with Joe Spinard. Any ideas what that may have attracted? Some business ladies, we will call them. for the sake of this family-oriented tour. So they followed Joe Spinard out there to the lake, put up their cabins with a little red light on top, and they were in business. That was the first red light district of Anchorage, right out there by the lake. And it ended up being a pretty unsavory part of town, obviously, with an average 1 shooting per month out there by the lake in those days. And there was typically 2 types of shootings that were seen. The first type, 2 guys fighting over the same beautiful woman of the night, a very romantic love story, and then boom, shooting and killing each other. That was the first type. Second type, any guesses?
2 women.
It was the wives. Those wives were looking for their husbands, and they found them. Those scumbags. You know she was packing heat. They all were, and it got boom, shooting and killing her husband. And it happened often enough that it actually earned a nickname, the Spinard Divorce. Well, Spinard Divorce. What an honor to his name. Thank you, Joe Spinard. So we've been cruising along here for a while on Northern Lights Boulevard. Let's talk about the Northern Lights for a second. So, the Northern Lights are caused by these hydrogen explosions on the surface of the sun that send out gaseous molecules in every direction. This big kind of wave of supercharged particles called the solar winds. And they're attracted to the poles. When they start interacting with the oxygen in our atmosphere, they'll create the phenomenon known as the aurora borealis, the Northern Lights. And a lot of the time when people think of the Northern Lights, they'll just be thinking of this classic kind of traffic light green, but they will be seen in all different kinds of colors: reds, whites, pinks, purples, and they're just absolutely breathtaking. The best time to see the Northern Lights is right about July 22nd at about 7 o'clock in the evening. So keep your eyes peeled though. Every once in a while I hear an, "Oh my gosh!" That is literally right now, Chris. I was like, oh well, what are the odds? I have no idea. I'm just kidding. So the deal with Northern Lights, they're actually always happening all year round. We just can't see them because of all of our daylight. So we're talking like really January and February, when that window of opportunity of dark, cool, calm, and clear is quite a bit wider, is when they are usually seen. And the farther north you go, the more often you are going to see them. Here in Anchorage, they'll be seen about 90 days out of the year. But if you go places like Fairbanks, about 7 hours north of Anchorage, they can be seen about 230 days out of the year. And not only will you see them more frequently the farther north, but more concentrated as well. Just really, Fairbanks and above just has northern light shows that are on a whole different level. Just like around lit up green, red, and pink from the lights above. They're pretty spectacular. A very worthy bucket list item. So we'll see you back here in January. A little reunion. So we're going to be making this left right here onto Minnesota Drive. If you noticed, back there we were on a Wisconsin street. There's a Minnesota, and there's a Michigan. There's a few others. We'll focus on those 3 for now. So the reason for those, at the time of the Great Depression, everybody was affected, but no one more so than those farmers in the Midwestern United States. Hit particularly hard. The combined effect of the Dust Bowl, losing their crops, their homes, their livelihoods. They were offered an opportunity by the federal government to come up here to Alaska and start rebuilding their lives. Those 3 states, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, were chosen to kind of pull people from for relocation because they believed that the climates in those states were similar enough to Alaska's that they would have the skills necessary to be successful up here. And so from those 3 states, about 200 families ended up taking them up on that offer, making their way up here, trying their hand. They were each allotted 40 acres that they were to turn into farmland, and given all the tools necessary to do so. But after about 5 years, only 20 of those families remained. The rest packed up shop and went home. So obviously the learning curve was pretty steep and insurmountable for some, but once you do know what you're doing, our crops grow remarkably well up here, contrary to popular belief. Our growing season is not terribly long, but it is intense. Just all that daylight. This summer right here in Anchorage, we officially got just over 20 hours of daylight. And even that was a little bit deceiving because here in Anchorage, there's about a 21-day period surrounding the summer solstice where it will only get as dark as civil twilight. And during that time of year, really, you can go outside in the dead of night and you can pretty much go about your business without the aid of artificial light. It is plenty bright enough outside. And that's not even talking about places like Barrow, the farthest northern town in Alaska, where they will literally not see the sun go down for over 41 days surrounding the summer solstice. It will never dip below the horizon. And they pay for it in the winter. not to see the sunrise, about the same amount of time. But you gotta take the good with the bad up here. And so, bringing it back to those crops, our crops can just get bonkers big. At our state fair every year, we have a competition to see who can grow the biggest crops. Every year, you will see 20-pound carrots and 30-pound zucchinis. The competition for the winning pumpkin, so the same guy has beat his own record now 3 years running. This past year, bringing in on a big old flatbed trailer the winning pumpkin. I want to hear some guesses. What do you guys think it weighed?
1,500.
Just over 2,000 pounds.
Great gracious.
That's like a Volkswagen Beetle. Just a crane. Yeah. Pretty ridiculous. A lot of pumpkin pie. So we got two bodies of water right here. We got one on my right, one on my left after we pass this hill. These are both part of the Westchester Lagoon. If you like bird watching, this is the spot to be. Westchester Lagoon is like a Motel 6 for thousands of migratory birds. We get all different kinds of birds up here. Trumpeter swan, sandhill crane, Canada goose, mountain duck, Arctic tern, the list goes on. And traveling from all over the world, a lot of them can lose right about a third of their body weight due to dehydration on their long journey over the open ocean. So they will stop down there at Westchester Lagoon, kind of refuel, rehydrate, rest up, before heading farther north to the tundra of Alaska to lay their eggs. Relatively safe from predators up there. So, one bird in particular that has kind of spiked my interest. I'm not much of a bird dude, but this one's pretty sweet. So, the Arctic tern. It has the longest migratory pattern of any species. It goes over 25,000 miles from past the tips of Chile and Argentina to make it up here to the Arctic. And while it's making its way up here, it flies continuously the entire time. Never touches down. And it's able to do that because it has the unique ability to effectively turn off half of its brain. It kind of goes into this autopilot mode. So it can actually sleep while it flies on its long journey up here to Alaska. The Arctic tern. Mother Nature's a trip. And that is a practice that has been widely adopted by the drivers up here as well. Keep your eyes peeled, walking around. The last bird we'll talk about, our state bird. Anybody know what it is?
Mosquito.
It is the mosquito. You're exactly right, sir. The mosquito. Every once in a while, somebody will say the willow ptarmigan, our actual state bird. And I just get so sad. You just have to say mosquito. That's just the thing up here. After you pass this light, going to be on your right-hand side, you're going to start seeing some duplexes, kind of look like barracks a little bit. So these all housed the military officers that came up here during World War II. World War II was fought up here in Alaska. We lost a few islands off the Aleutian chain briefly. Had to fight to get those back. Ever since then, well, so at that time, about 30,000 troops were shipped up here. And ever since then, there's been a pretty serious military presence up here in Alaska. Coming back up to the Delaney Park strip, when we do, if you look to your left-hand side, you will see a military memorial. And etched on those stones are some of the names of those Alaskans that have given the ultimate sacrifice. That monument stays decorated 365 days of the year with flowers and flags to pay tribute. Much earned respect to those that have fallen. And our entry rate into the military up here in Alaska is quite a bit higher than the national average, with 1 in 5 graduating seniors entering to some branch of the military. 1 in 5. Kind of poking out through the trees out there in front of us, we had a better look at it earlier on the tour, a much better look at it, right after we left the railroad station, but I would be remiss if I did not talk about the Port of Anchorage down there. So, the Port of Anchorage, otherwise known as the Port of Alaska, it recently underwent a name change, but still referred to by both. But that name change took place because it doesn't matter what it is, whether you are eating it, wearing it, or driving it, it probably came through there. 85% of all of the goods that flow into this state go through that port. So if it were to shut down, we would be a hurting unit. They say that we would have about 2 weeks before our grocery stores were empty. And about 2 hours before the toilet paper was gone. That joke hit so hard last year. And I already heard somebody make some remark about it, but all the flowers are all over the place. Aren't they gorgeous? Yeah, so the city of Anchorage every single spring will plant over 75,000 flowers in this downtown area. These hanging baskets, the big flower beds. And the flowers up here in Alaska, they just get so big and vibrant and beautiful because all that daylight they're eating up all day long. Any last questions before we finish up here at 7 o'clock? We made it. Anybody?
No.
All right, thank you guys so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, 1 in 10 of all Alaskans earns all or a portion of their income through tourism. So on behalf of Alaska and Anchorage Trolley Tours, thank you for visiting our beautiful states. Thank you for coming on this tour with me. You guys were awesome. Hope this was fun and informative for you, and you have an exciting and adventurous rest of your Alaska vacations. Thank you guys very much. Thank you. If you guys enjoyed the tour and used TripAdvisor, feel free to drop me a review. My name is Chris, KRIS. If you did not enjoy the tour, my name is Cyrus. There you go, yeah. Retro guy. Retro guy was the worst. We love Cyrus. He rocks a trolley hat like no other.
Oh, I know.
He sure does. Alright. So I'm going to pull up this curb here. Watch your step on the way down. I'll be down there if you need me. Feel free to grab my arm while you guys are stepping down. And enjoy the rest of this beautiful evening. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thanks, man.
Here.